He does not allow anyone to share His authority. All of the strings pulled in this story were all pulled by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And through this story, He displayed His oneness and His capacity to do what was mentioned. Okay. Consequently, Allah used their lives as a sign for future believing generations by giving them a miraculous life. Through this, He provided humanity with clear proof that He is the Creator and that resurrection is a reality. I'm not going to go into this part that I had prepared. So let's go to the 7 sleepers. So one of the things that I try to do in tafsir is whenever we come across a story of the Prophet, anything to do with a historical figure or incident, there is the version, there is the haqq, actual version, which is the Quranic version, and then there are also alternate versions. And in the stories being relayed to us, remember one thing about the Quran, that the Quran is not going to lay out frivolous details that do not feed into inspiration and guidance. Like, what difference does it make if Ashab al-Kahf were sleeping for 300 years, 309 years, or 304 and a half years? Does it make a difference in the story? Does it make a difference if there were 5, 6, 7, or 8? Okay, so there are certain descriptions, there are certain details that feed into the inspiration and the moral and the lesson in the Quran. However, you will notice certain minute details. There are certain details of incidents, particular details that are in the verbiage, in the text of the Quran. You appreciate the reason and purpose that they are there when you hear the alternate story. There's something in the biblical, in the Old Testament tradition that is inaccurate. So to fix that inaccuracy, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings the particular peripheral detail in the story. So let's hear about the 7 sleepers. Now, this story is not found within the Bible. It found its way into Christian thought and circle through the works of a person named Simeon the Metaphrast. A metaphrast is a person who translates or changes a literary work from one form and he makes it into poetry. So someone who takes stories and then relays them and of saints' lives. The story of the 7 sleepers of Ephesus is attributed to Simeon by some scholars. Other versions include a Latin account by Saint Gregory of Tours and a Syriac version by Jacob of Serug. The story, coined as the 7 sleepers of Ephesus, gained popularity in both Europe and the Middle East during medieval times. It was translated into Latin and found its way into many Christian works of that era. In Christianity, the 7 sleepers were heroized since it affirmed the resurrection of the dead, in particular the resurrection of Christ. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us about the 7 sleepers? Did they die or did they sleep? The story of the 7 sleepers became the dalil for the Christians of that time who took this story to affirm that, look, these 7 were dead and Allah brought them back to life. Hence, al-iyadu billah, the Lord resurrected the Lord. That doesn't make sense to even a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old. Anyways. Trajan Decius, or Decius, or as known in Arabic history, Daqyanus. He was the emperor of the Roman Empire from 249 to 251. During his reign, he attempted to strengthen the Roman state and its religion, leading to the Decian persecution, where a number of prominent Christians, including Pope Fabian, were put to death. With the ascension of this emperor, the Roman government's tolerant policy towards Christianity temporarily ended. Daqyanus ordered everyone in the empire, with the exception of the Jews, to demonstrate loyalty to Rome by offering incense to the cult images of idols that represented the Roman state. This was unacceptable to many Christians who, while no longer obeying most of the laws of the Old Testament, took the commandment against idolatry serious. Dqiyanus once came to Ephesus to enforce his laws against Christians. Here he found 7 noble young men who were Christians. The emperor tried them and then gave them some time to renounce their faith till he came back again into town. Rather than do that, they distributed their wealth amongst the poor and hid in a mountain cave where they began to pray. During the prayer, they were overcome by great sleepiness. When they were found sleeping in the cave at the behest of the emperor, the entrance to the cave was sealed. An alternative version of this story claims that Dqiyanus ordered the incarceration of young men in a cave as punishment for their beliefs, and they were buried alive. So this was the king. The king ordered for the mouth of the cave to be closed so that they can die inside. Okay. But a Christian man came and wrote on the outside of the cave the names of the martyrs and their story. After this incident happened and the king ordered it, a Christian person came who knew about this, wrote their names on the cave and their story. Many years passed and Christianity turned from a persecuted religion to being the state religion. After 250 years, during the reign of Theodosius, a landowner decided to demolish the wall covering up the entrance to the cave with the intent to use it as a stall for his animals. He was surprised to find 7 men sleeping inside. They woke up with the conviction that they slept for just one day. As they were tormented by hunger, they sent one volunteer to the city to buy some food. He was to be extremely careful not to get caught by the pagans. When the man entered Ephesus, he noticed there were crosses on many buildings in the city. The biggest sensation was caused by his attempt to pay for the food with old coins from the time of Dqiyanus. City residents called the local bishop, who heard the story of these 7 young men. Theodosius is sent for, and the saints tell him their story. Their story came at a time when heretics were denying the resurrection of the body of Christ. There was an ikhtilaf going on in the Christian community. And one thing about Christian history is that the Roman emperor of that time, every Roman emperor made sure that there was no ikhtilaf amongst the Christians. And they always tried to come to a resolve. And they would summon councils to get all of the teams together to debate it in front of the king, who is not necessarily scholarly or religious. He's just the king who would decide, okay, this is going to be the aqidah from now, and everyone has to follow this aqidah. And whoever doesn't follow this aqidah, heresy. Right? This is how things worked. Everyone rejoiced at their story that served as a proof for the resurrection of the body. The sleepers, after telling their story, they then die praising God. The emperor wants to build golden tombs for them, but they appear to him in a dream and ask him to be buried in the earth in their cave. The cave is adorned with precious stones. A great church is built over it, and every year the feast of the 7 sleepers is kept. So, this is the biblical version. I mean, not the biblical. The version that made its way into Christian thought. So this is the city of Izmir. About an hour south of Izmir, Turkey, Ephesus was an ancient port city whose well-preserved ruins are in modern-day Turkey. The city was once considered the most important Greek city and the most important trading center in the Mediterranean region. Throughout history, Ephesus survived multiple attacks. It changed hands many times between conquerors. Ephesus played a vital role in the spread of Christianity. Notable Christians such as St. Paul and St. John visited and rebuked the cults of Artemis, winning many Christian converts in the process. It became an early hotbed of Christian evangelicism, and remains an important archaeological site and Christian pilgrimage destination. Mary, the mother of Jesus, is thought to have spent her last years in Ephesus with St. John. Her house and John's tomb can be visited there today. Ephesus is mentioned multiple times in the New Testament, and the biblical book of Ephesians, written about 60 AD, or sorry, CE, is thought to be a letter from Paul to the Christians living there, although some scholars question the source. So you see this right here? These are the ruins of that old city. This is called whatever's left of the Basilica of St. John. This is known as the house of Maryam alayhi salam, okay, according to their collections. Since the earliest version of the story comes from the vicinity of Ephesus, the legendary cave was identified with the grotto on the slope of this particular mountain. This cave was declared a sacred place and began to attract pilgrims. For hundreds of years, the faithful wanted to be buried as close as possible next to the holy youths. With time, numerous graves appeared and the catacombs were built in the vicinity. So this is the grotto of the 7 sleepers in Ephesus, Turkey. And they have a sign and everything there. You see it's called 7 sleepers. Anyone from Turkey here? No? Okay. Now let's go to Amman, Jordan. About 18 miles north of Amman's airport is another area claiming to be where the 7 Ashab al-Kahf are said to be buried. And that's this. The entrance to the entombed ruined cave is rather small and interestingly points south towards Mecca and the Qibla. The facade is somewhat adorned and is of typical Byzantine style, with the entrance flanked by 2 pillars and niches on each side. On the walls outside the cave are engravings and carvings which are unique to the region. Weathered, engraved decorative frontage and sculpted pillars frame the doorway. So Ashab al-Kahf, we know what that means, right? Ashab al-Kahfi war أم حسبت أن أصحاب الكهف والرقيم. The word raqim means inscription. When something is written and left for display. Inscription. So remember in Ephesus, what did that person do? He wrote their story on the mouth of the cave. And over here also, when this was discovered, it also had an inscription on the outer wall. The cave is divided into 3 sections. One section stretches straight from the entrance in a northward direction. A second section branches off towards the east on the right hand, and a third on the left hand. In the eastern and western sections are 8 constructed graves resembling coffins. The grave on the northern flank, left of the eastern section, has a small hole. If one peers into the right hole, human remains can be clearly seen. This is a hollow cavity that contains human remains. The tomb to the right bears an octagon, maybe a remnant of the Christian church. And if you stick your head in there, you can see human remains. These are tombs that are built. And that's the inscription on that rock on top. Okay. In the eastern section of the cave is a small tunnel ascending upwards, which resembles a chimney that expels smoke. This tunnel enters and leaves through the roof of the cave. Usama ibn Munqid, one of Salahuddin Ayyubi's courtiers, writes in his book, I, together with 30 horsemen, entered this cave and performed prayers here, but there was a narrow tunnel that we did not enter. And that's this tunnel right here. The lower masjid looking west with mihrab and stone member to the left was probably installed during the Umayyad and Abbasid periods. The remains of an ancient masjid together with its mihrab can be clearly noticed, elevated several feet above the cave. At one time, a small church was built on top of the cave. This was converted to a masjid with the mihrab still being visible. The masjid is 10 meters long, 10 meters wide. 4 pillars were discovered, fashioned in the mode of the Roman era, and several copper coins were also discovered from the era of the Roman Emperor Justin. So there was this debate after they passed away. The emperor said what? Let's make, the opinion was, let's make a monument. Let's make a monument to celebrate this. But then at the end, what was decided? That they will not make a monument on top of this hill where the cave was, but we will make masjid. Now let's translate it as a place of worship, which was a church, which then got converted to a masjid. Okay. A number of artifacts were found during excavations, including coins belonging to the Roman era and the Ottoman era. These include a clay bowl, a pearl necklace, a copper comb, and rings. All of these things have been gathered and they are placed on display, maintained within the northern wall of the cave. And these are all of those artifacts. Masjid Ahlul Kahf is a masjid that is dedicated towards this, and it's right there. This is called Masjid Ahlul Kahf. Welcome to the site of the people of the cave. This is the courtyard. This is the masjid. All right. There are other places that claim to host 7 people who slept in a cave. All right? The precise location and many other minute details do not have more importance than the actual message. So, we have China, Amman, Jordan. So, this is the one in China. Okay? And then there's one in Tunisia, which I didn't get the pictures for. So, with 20 seconds left. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in relating the story of Surah Kahf. Now, is there importance to any of these slides as to where and how it looked? It doesn't contribute to that, right? Why did I share it? Entertainment. All right? So, for us to see and have a visual. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after talking about Ashabul Kahf, for right here. All of this in purple. Oh, hold on. Yeah. Everything in red right here. You see this? In red? Everything in red over here talks about, oh, when they woke up, they started first having the discussion, shall we make a masjid or shall we make a tomb? Shall we make a masjid or shall we make a tomb? Oh, were they 3 or 4? No, were they 4 or 5? Or were they 6 or 7? Or were they 7 or 8? And all of this back and forth discussion. And then at the end, oh, how many years? This has been relayed to us so the Muslims can take heed that, look, such a miraculous event. No, they just realized that this was a miracle from Allah and that God resurrected what? Jesus. You're supposed to be absorbed with all of that, but instead of that, you miss the point and like you're there, you discovered these people, and now what? How many graves are here? How long did they stay? What shall we make here? Don't lose the point. Don't lose the point. And mentioning all of this, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَا تُمَارِ فِيهِمْ إِلَّا مِرَاءً ظَاهِرًا. Don't get into a debate with them about these things. إِلَّا مِرَاءً ظَاهِرًا. Have a surface level discussion and say that, look, this is our story. End of story. This is the story. End of story. نَحْنُ نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ نَبَأَهُمْ بِالْحَقِّ. We are going to tell you their story. Certified, official story is from the Quran. And all of this stuff, say what? قُلْ رَبِّي أَعْلَمُ بِعِدَّتِهِمْ. Just tell them Allah knows how many, because how many they were or how long they stayed and all of the other finer details, that is missing the point. And the point is what? To understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the capacity to put a body to sleep for 300 years And if anybody, if you were to sleep on ground, if you were to go into a cave and just lay down and sleep for 300 years, how many of us have taken care of a sick person or an elderly person who was bedridden? You've seen bed sores? Why do you have to keep on moving a patient to the right and to the left? What happens? Bed sores. For 300 years, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so it shows the miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the power that after 300 years He brought them back. And it also teaches us a lesson that look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made for the sun to dodge them. So the sun doesn't, they don't get skin burn, but they get enough heat to maintain, because inside a cave you would assume it's going to be what? It's going to be cold. And then the fact that they kept on, so some of us when we sleep, you sleep, or maybe not anymore, but once upon a time, or our kids, they'll sleep on one side of the bed and then wake up on the other side of the bed, right? They'll be turned around. It's like, oh, the pillow's here and the legs are here. These things, this movement facilitated and it was a display that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala catered for every need in that. Every small little need. Subhanallah. So that this can be display of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power. So folks, this was the one story of the people in the cave. Inshallah, next time we are going to move into story 2 in the next round. In 2 weeks, we will continue with Surah Maryam, inshallah. And that's also going to be a rundown, a walk down history lane, inshallah. We're going to talk about Palestine, ancient Israel, and all of that, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.